This happened about 2 years ago when I first started at my college university. I went to a pretty nice school, about an hour away from home. I've since dropped out, but really enjoyed my time there. Of course, when starting at a new school, you're bound to meet a few creepers. This guy was no exception. During the first week of school, they get you acquainted to campus through freshman orientation. This first week is full of seminars regarding your major, giant meet and greets with people in your major path, and huge parties held by the RAs of every dorm on campus. It's pretty popular among upperclassmen to say that you meet nearly 200 people your first week, but only stay friends with about 10. During this week, I met lots of new people from many different places. It was common to add one another on Facebook, so my friend list had noticeably expanded. Many of the people I had met face to face through some of the campus activities, but others were people who were just trying to add the entire freshman class. I accepted friend requests blindly, assuming I had met most of the people who were adding me. I didn't think much of it at the time. After the excitement of being in a new place with new people had died down, I had narrowed down my 10 or so friends from the 200 faces I had just been overwhelmed with. We lived in dorms and quads that were closest to each other, so we spent a lot of time together. We often would meet up to get food with each other and party on the weekends. One day, when we had all met up to go get lunch, I was approached in the cafeteria by a semi-familiar face. He introduced himself as Will and said he recognized me from Facebook. He was clearly one of the many faces I had just added to my friends list without a second thought. I played nice and asked how he was, inquired about his major, and asked what dorm he lived in. He told me I should stop by sometime to say hello, but I only agreed to be nice and did not plan on actually visiting this stranger. After our brief conversation, I met back up with my friends and continued my day. After that, Will seemed to appear wherever I was. It started out as simple encounters, catching a glimpse of him in the library while I was studying, bumping into him at one of the food places on campus, and seeing him waiting in lecture halls before and after classes, all things that could be passed off as right place, right time. After a grueling exam one morning, I had nestled up in a comfy chair with a cup of coffee to wait for a friend of mine. Suddenly, Will approached me out of nowhere. He made himself comfortable next to me and began to ask me odd questions. One of his questions was regarding whether or not I had any piercings, to which I replied that I did. The one that interested him the most was that I had my belly button pierced. He asked if he could see it, as well as my tattoo on my lower back. I was thoroughly creeped out and did not oblige. I laughed it off as not to offend him and gave him the benefit of the doubt, since he was not from the U.S. He then began to ask if I had a boyfriend, where he went to school, and so on and so forth. I told him yes, and that my boyfriend at the time went to a state university about 3 hours away, but we kept in constant contact. He seemed disappointed to learn that I was taken, but his questions became more friendly after that. My friend I had been waiting for arrived shortly after, and the two of us left. Will mentioned something about seeing me on Facebook, and laughed as we left. I began to tell my friends about our weird conversation, and they agreed that he was a little on the creepy side. Will had started to show up everywhere I went without fail. At every sporting event, he was right in front of me, casting looks over his shoulder. Every time I was in a building on campus, he showed up minutes after I arrived and sat himself up with a clear view of me. I had friends who lived in the same dorm as he did, and he always waited in the lobby on days when I came to visit. Despite how many times he tried to stop me to talk, I always waved casually and pretended I was busy and had somewhere to be. Then he started appearing on my Facebook. He started liking all of my pictures, but only ones of myself. He commented on all of them, telling me I looked pretty. This was attention I did not desire, considering I had a significant other at the time. He liked all of my updates, all of the links I shared, every single thing I posted. He jumped right on the bandwagon with posts meant for my close friends. Nothing was safe from his awkward comments. This continued into the fall when Halloween rolled around. One of the dorms most of my male friends lived in was having a Halloween party, and my roommate and I were invited. That night we got prepared and took pictures of each other in our run-of-the-mill, this is the only costume I can really do given my resources outfits. I had constantly had my computer open and running, and was surprised to see my Facebook message icon flashing. I had one message from Will. In it, he said I looked great in my cat costume, and asked if I would like an escort to the Halloween party at the dorm that night. Now, to put this into perspective, my dorm was on one end of the campus and his was on the other. The dorm where the party was being held was about a 5-minute walk from mine. His offer came off as very strange. I kindly declined, but he told me he would see me there, Catwoman, with a winky face. I showed my roommate the messages, and she told me we didn't have to go. I wasn't going to let it ruin the fun we had in store, so we went anyway. When we arrived, I didn't catch a glimpse of Will. After a few minutes, I did see him come in through the front doors. Immediately, I ducked down and hid among my friends. A few of them laughed, but most of them knew that Will had been following me and jumped to my aid as they tried to shield me from his view. He was walking around the lobby looking around frantically for something. Apparently what he was looking for was me. After dodging him for several minutes, he finally found me and tried to casually chat me up. As if he hadn't just been stalking the party for me, he complimented my costume again and began to make remarks about my physical appearance. I quickly told him I was leaving, to which he offered to walk me home. Instead, I got an upperclassman to walk me back to my dorm. I thanked him profusely. It was after that encounter that I decided it was time to remove Will from my Facebook. His comments had begun to annoy me, and I didn't know if he was using my Facebook to find me every time I left my dorm room. I assumed that would be the last of it. A few days later, I was on my way to class when I noticed Will and a large group of people headed my way. They were all chatting, so I hoped he wouldn't notice me. After I squeezed past them on the path, a familiar voice called out to me, "Hey, wait." I turned around to face Will, a stern look on his face. "Why did you remove me on Facebook?" I became extremely uncomfortable and my blood ran cold. I thought he would take the hint if he noticed at all, but confronting me about it in public was a whole new level of creepy. I took a stand, simply stating that he was creeping me out with his weird comments and his constant appearing where I was. I told him I didn't want him in my life and turned to leave. That was when he roughly grabbed my arm and tried to turn me around to face him again. He claimed he wanted to talk it out, but I was furious that he had grabbed me. I ripped my hand away and yelled at him to not touch me, drawing the attention of quite a few people passing by. I told him firmly that he needed to leave me alone or I would get campus police involved. He shook his head and walked back to his group of friends. I only saw him a few more times after that. He would always glare at me when I managed to make eye contact with him. After I dropped out, I haven't seen or heard from him again. So Will, let's not meet. Ever again. I was around 13 at the time, and my older sisters had moved out already, so usually it was just me, my mom, and my dad, as well as our dog, Mac. Mac was a relatively big dog, being a yellow Labrador retriever. My dad loved to take him on walks late at night on the trails that cut through the woods. I was usually uneasy about going. My dad always asked me to go, but I never really agreed. That was until that one specific night, my dad had asked me yet again, and to his surprise, I actually said yes. Our walk started out normal. We talked, we walked, and that was about it, until we started to approach the park. My dad stopped at the edge of the trail and asked if I wanted to go down. I hesitated, but the look in my dad's eyes and the peaceful weather somehow persuaded me to say yes. My dad was a pretty big dude, and I figured if something went wrong, he'd be able to protect me. As we were on the trail, my dad got a bit ahead of me as I paced back a bit to enjoy the night a little more. As we were approaching the end of the trail, I heard a snap behind me. I quickly flung around to see a man, probably about 20 feet behind me, holding a pocket knife in his hand. He acknowledged that I had noticed him, and he slowly put his knife in his hoodie pocket, keeping his hands in the pocket with it. My heart started to race. Questions ran through my mind. Do I run? Do I shout? Do I warn my dad? I decided to stay silent, trying to remain calm. My dad was a little less than 10 feet away from me. I would be fine, right? As I turned back every now and then, I could see the creep gaining on me, walking quicker and quicker each step. This made my heart sink. Finally, I managed to make a sound towards my dad. I managed to croak out the word, "Dad?" which to my luck worked. My dad turned around to face me, instantly seeing the creep who was by now about 15 to 10 feet away from me. My dad grabbed my arm and pulled me next to him, facing forward and walking quickly. By now, the trail that led back into our neighborhood was in sight, and I started to feel relieved. Matt couldn't stop growling and trying to turn around. My dad continued to speed walk, my arm sternly in one of his hands and my dog's leash in the other. When we finally reached the trail, we continued to walk gradually, getting a bit slower. As I turned back one last time, I saw the man flash me a smile before taking a sharp right onto the trail that led to the apartments. Even though the man never hurt us, I do strongly believe that if I hadn't been with my dad that night, or even if my dad hadn't been with me, something bad would have happened. I don't know what the man's intentions were, but I'm just glad that I lucked out and that my dad knew what to do. Creepy guy in the woods, let's not meet again. Well, it's Friday, November 27th in Canada. I live in a medium-sized town near Toronto, Ontario. It was 9 p.m. and my dog needed a walk. I'm 16 and I live with my parents and my brother. After the daylight savings time change, it starts getting dark around 4 p.m. We will call my brother Q, because I don't want to use his name. My dog's name is Ohana from Lilo and Stitch. I didn't like it, but my sister named it. Q was watching TV and I was finishing playing video games. I rage quit and needed some air because I had been playing all day. I called out for Ohana to come here so we can go on a walk. I asked Q if it was freezing outside. Q answered, yeah. I invited him to come on a quick walk around the block. He said sure. We both got our coats and shoes and hats on because it was -2 outside. We put Ohana's chain on because she is a big dog. I brought my phone just in case I needed to use the flashlight because it's dark out. We went down our driveway and started walking down our street. Once we got to the end, we took a left. We noticed that the street light was out for some reason. I remembered that during the week I was walking my mom's friend's daughter home from the elementary school, that people were working on it, and we had to walk around the power cords. Keep in mind, the lights are only there because the elementary school is right beside it. Q said, "Hey, Log, do you see those people?" At first I thought he was trying to scare me. I responded, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "Keep looking over there." It took me a while as we were looking to notice if people were behind us, because it's pretty dark and the trees were behind the sidewalk. They were across the street. I said, "Oh, now I see them." As we walked up to the lights, we had to cross the street and take a left. They were on the sidewalk in front of the school. We crossed the street and took a left and noticed them staring at us. I took my phone and acted like I was using it because it looked kind of sketchy. Imagine the street lights being off across the street and these random people are watching you. We walked a bit further and I took note that they crossed the street and were walking toward our direction. I said to myself, maybe they have to go down the street? When we stopped at a stop sign to tell Ohana to sit, I noticed they stopped like they were trying to act not noticeable. Ohana looked at them like they were up to no good and let out a bark. I told her to shut up and let's go. Once we crossed the street, I asked Q, "Why do you think they were walking so slow?" He responded, "Maybe they're just girls talking." I said, "What if they're following us?" He laughed and said, "You're so superstitious." I said, "Maybe." We walked all the way to where we have to cross the road to get to our street. They were still walking in our direction, so we turned. As we turned, Ohana turned and looked right at them in the middle of the street. She barked again, but twice and louder. I pulled her immediately. We had about less than 100 meters to our house. I told Q if they turn, we're going to keep walking because if they're following us, they would know where we live. We got to the front of our house across the road, and wouldn't you know it, they turned. Keep in mind, there's no sidewalk, so Q and I passed our house, and Ohana was confused, but she kept going. We decided that when we get to the end of the street, we will take a right and make a run for it to the high school and try to lose them. They wouldn't be able to see us running because there's a tree and a house blocking their view. We got to the end of the street and took a right, and as we passed the tree, we booked it as fast as we can go with Ohana leading the way. Me and Q are both football players, so we were in shape. The one thing that really screwed us over was Ohana stopping and having to take a shit. I said, "Great move, really pulling the horror movie screw up." Q laughed, and as soon as she was done, I grabbed the poop bag to pick it up quickly. I got it and tied it quickly and kept running. We got to the school and cut inside between it and the portables. Behind the school there's an alleyway with fences that leads to the street behind our house. We ran through the alleyway and took a right so we would be able to get back to our house. Once we got to the end of the street, Q looked behind us to check if they were still tailing us. If they didn't see us, they would have to follow the sidewalk and take a right or a left, which would take double the time. As we were crossing the street, we looked down the street and we saw the people just standing there, waiting and looking in the other direction. Q said, "Fuck this." I said, "Relax, we will keep going straight and go down another street, and we'll come out on the other street and maybe they'll be gone." He agreed and we quietly crossed the street, but Ohana was about to bark, but I stepped in front of her and grabbed her snout to get her attention. She kept walking. As we were walking, Q asked, "Log, what time is it?" I pulled out my phone and it was 10:29 p.m. and realized I can call my home phone and ask my parents to come get us. So I dialed the home phone number. My dad answered and said, "Logan, where are you? Are you okay?" I quickly said no, me and Quinn think we're being followed, and I told him what happened. He said, "I'll meet you guys on St. John Street." I told him we are going to take a right and we will keep walking until you see us. He agreed and said he'll quickly get into the car and get us. I hung up the phone. I looked behind us and noticed they snuck up on us while I was talking on the phone. These guys looked like thugs and started sprinting at us. They were 15 meters away. I don't know how the hell they got so close. Before I could yell and run, Quinn noticed and started running. One of them was fast as hell and tackled me to the ground. Q stopped and Ohana started barking uncontrollably. I kicked him right in his throat and he couldn't breathe. The other one came at me, but Ohana jumped and bit his arm, so we started screaming. Q took her off of him and picked me up and we started sprinting. I was scared because he said, "We know where you live and we will kill your family." We got away and called the police. What did they want from us? What did we do that was going to make them want to kill us? Those thoughts went through our minds. When the police arrived, they searched for them but couldn't find anyone. I couldn't describe them because I couldn't get a good look at them. We told them everything. That night, we didn't fall asleep until 3 a.m. because we were so scared. On Saturday night, we locked our doors and windows and kept our eyes peeled through a crack through the blinds in the windows on the main floor. I fell asleep on the couch and woke up at 2 a.m. to my dog barking at the front door. Even if they pick the lock, we have a lock on the top door that catches the door, and it can only open so much. I looked out the window in the front room and saw an SUV parked across the street. I called the police and they showed up and arrested them. They all got charged with aggravated assault and they're awaiting trial. They can be locked up for about 25 years. Thank God, but now I can't go outside or walk by myself. Hopefully we are safe. Hey guys, thank you all for watching my video. I want to give a big thank you to Sports Bros for submitting this story and letting me narrate it. Thanks a lot, man, and I'm really sorry for what happened to you, dude. I got jumped a while back, so I know how that feels, man. But thankfully they got caught, so they're assholes and they're going to jail. But anyways, guys, if you guys want your story narrated just like Sports Bros, don't forget to email me it. I can't wait to read it. And if you guys want your names mentioned at all, leave it in the email so that way, I don't get in trouble. But anyways, guys, I'm really sorry for this video being a bit short and kind of long to make. Life, unfortunately, has a way of shitting on you, but I promised longer videos in the past, and I'm going to keep to that. But anyways, guys, I hope everybody's having a good night, and I'll see you next time. And just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.